Nobody expected this to be the line that finally set Chrisean Rock completely off, but the second Karlissa's claim hit the internet, the temperature went nuclear. Not spicy, not messy, nuclear. When someone puts a statement about a child into the public bloodstream, especially a claim this shocking, there's no walking it back, no taken out of context, no delete button strong enough to save you. And when Chrisean Rock saw it, the fuse didn't just light, it detonated. This wasn't internet beef anymore. This wasn't family drama for clicks. This felt like a line getting crossed in permanent ink. One claim, one sentence, and suddenly, the internet stopped laughing and started leaning forward like something dangerous had just been said out loud. Fans froze, critics perked up, reaction channels smelled blood. Because when motherhood gets dragged into a public fight, the rules change instantly. Chrisean didn't respond with calm. She didn't respond with diplomacy. She responded like a mother pushed past her limit. And the explosion that followed made every past scandal look like warm-up rounds. This wasn't chaos for entertainment. This was fury with a pulse. And the scariest part, the internet couldn't decide whether to clutch pearls, grab popcorn, or start choosing sides. Chrisean Rock didn't wake up planning to explode that day. But the internet has a way of lighting fires and then acting shocked when something burns down. The moment Karlissa's claim about Chrisean Jr. started circulating, it didn't land like gossip. It landed like a live wire dropped into gasoline. This wasn't vague shade or family side-eye drama. This was a statement about a child, wrapped in certainty, tossed into a public arena that never forgets and never forgives. And the second it hit timelines, the energy shifted from messy to dangerous. To understand why Chrisean snapped the way she did, you have to understand the history baked into this moment. This family dynamic has never been quiet, never private, and never handled behind closed doors. Every disagreement has played out like reality TV without editors, where emotions spill first and explanations come later. Karlissa has always been outspoken, unfiltered, and unapologetic about inserting herself into narratives involving Chrisean. But this time, the internet didn't hear commentary, it heard a claim. And claims about children don't live in the same category as adult beef. The allegation spread faster than context ever could. Screenshots bounced from platform to platform, captions grew more dramatic with every repost, and suddenly people weren't asking if it was true. They were asking why it was said out loud in the first place. That distinction mattered, because once something that heavy enters the public conversation, the damage isn't just about accuracy, it's about impact, and the impact was immediate. Fans went silent for a beat, critics leaned in. And reaction channels started circling like sharks. Who smelled blood in algorithmic waters? Chrisean didn't respond right away. And that silence only made things worse. In internet time, a pause feels like a confession. People filled the gap with theories, assumptions, and narratives that suited whatever side they were already on. Some claimed the silence meant she was scrambling. Others said she was trying to stay calm, but anyone who's watched Chrisean long enough knew one thing for sure. When she finally spoke, it wouldn't be gentle. When she did snap, it wasn't polished rage. It was raw, immediate, and unmistakably personal. This wasn't performative anger for engagement. This was a mother reacting to what she felt was a line crossed beyond repair. Her tone wasn't sarcastic or playful like past clapbacks. It was sharp, protective, and fueled by a mix of disbelief and fury. The kind of anger that doesn't care how it looks on camera because it's not meant for the camera at all. What made the explosion hit harder was how public it became so quickly. Every word she said was clipped, replayed, and recaptioned within minutes. Reaction videos popped up before her response even finished making its rounds. People weren't just reacting to her words. They were reacting to her emotional state, dissecting her tone like it was a press conference instead of a breaking point. And in classic internet fashion, empathy became optional while judgment stayed mandatory. Supporters rallied fast, framing her reaction as justified and inevitable. To them, this wasn't Chrisean losing it. This was a mother defending her child against what they saw as reckless speculation. They argued that even mentioning something like that publicly was irresponsible. Regardless of intent, critics fired back just as loudly, accusing her of overreacting, escalating drama, and turning a sensitive situation into another viral spectacle. The comment sections turned into digital war zones where no one was listening, only responding. The sarcasm of it all wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. The same internet that constantly demands transparency suddenly couldn't handle the emotional fallout of a transparent reaction. People begged her to speak up, then criticized how she spoke up. They demanded calm from someone they'd been provoking for months. It was like poking a bear repeatedly and then acting surprised when it finally roared. Old tensions resurfaced instantly. Past arguments between Chrisean and Karlissa were dragged back into the spotlight, stitched together into long threads meant to prove patterns and assign blame. The narrative became less about the original claim and more about who had crossed lines before. History was weaponized, context was cherry-picked, and nuance was nowhere to be found. In the court of public opinion, this wasn't about truth anymore, it was about loyalty. What really poured fuel on the fire was how fast outsiders inserted themselves. Influencers who had never been involved suddenly had strong opinions. Armchair experts analyzed facial expressions and tone like they were decoding a hidden message. Memes started circulating almost immediately. Because nothing says internet culture like turning a volatile family moment into reaction bait. The seriousness of the claim clashed violently with the unserious way it was being consumed. Through all of this, one thing became painfully clear. The situation had moved beyond control. Chrisean's reaction didn't just address the claim. It amplified the conversation around it, not because she wanted attention, but because the internet magnifies emotion by default. Anger travels faster than clarification. Outrage spreads quicker than restraint. And once the clip existed, there was no version of events where this stayed contained. This moment marked a shift. The drama was no longer just interpersonal. It had become public theater with real-world consequences. People weren't just watching anymore. They were choosing sides, digging trenches, and preparing for whatever came next. The claim, the snap, the fallout, it all fused into one explosive storyline that refused to slow down. And that's where the tension thickened. Because once a situation reaches this level of volatility, it doesn't resolve quietly. It escalates, it mutates, and it drags more people into the blast radius. The internet wasn't asking whether this should have been said anymore. It was waiting to see how far this would go. And who else would get pulled under? This wasn't the peak, it was the ignition. And as the reactions kept stacking and the pressure kept rising, one thing was obvious. Whatever came next was going to be louder, messier, and impossible to ignore. The explosion didn't cool down after Chrisean snapped. It multiplied. Once her reaction hit full circulation, the internet treated it like a championship match with unlimited rounds. Every platform became a different arena. And somehow each one managed to make the situation louder, messier, and more distorted than the last. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was algorithm fuel, and the internet burned it like it was premium gasoline. Reaction channels went into overdrive, churning outtakes at a speed that made it obvious nobody was waiting for facts. Some creators framed Karlissa's claim as reckless and unforgivable, calling it the kind of statement that should never be said publicly, especially when a child is involved. Others twisted the narrative, suggesting Chrisean's rage proved instability, as if anger in defense of a child is somehow shocking behavior. The goalposts moved every 5 minutes, because outrage doesn't need consistency, it just needs engagement. Memes arrived right on schedule, because the internet has an unmatched talent for turning tension into punchlines. Screenshots froze Chrisean mid-sentence, captions exaggerated her expression, and suddenly a moment of raw fury was being recycled as reaction bait. Some memes were sympathetic, painting her as a mother pushed too far. Others were savage, mocking. Her tone, her delivery, her emotions. The contrast was jarring. A serious allegation about a child was being digested the same way people consume celebrity breakups and red carpet mishaps. Then came the neutral observers, the most dangerous group of all. These were the voices claiming they were just asking questions, while actively inflaming the situation. They speculated about motives, timing, and intent, pretending objectivity while fanning flames. This is where the conversation really spiraled, because speculation dressed up as logic travels fast and sticks hard. Suddenly, nobody was talking about whether the claim should have been made. They were debating what it might mean, which is internet code for building narratives out of thin air. Celebrity reactions added another chaotic layer. Some public figures posted big messages about protecting children, family boundaries, or keeping things offline, and the internet immediately treated them like secret alliances. Likes were screenshotted, follows were analyzed, silence was interpreted as guilt, support was read as sides being chosen. Even people who never said her name found themselves dragged into the drama, because once a story hits this level, association becomes unavoidable. TikTok turned the situation into a full-blown trend. Audio snippets from Chrisean's response were clipped, looped, and reused under unrelated videos, stripping away context until all that remained was emotion. One viral sound later, and people who couldn't identify Karlissa from a lineup were confidently debating the situation, like seasoned insiders. That's the dark art of virality. It invites strangers into private conflicts and convinces them they belong there. As the noise grew louder, old footage resurfaced like clockwork. The internet loves receipts, especially when it's trying to justify its outrage. Past arguments between Chrisean and Karlissa were dragged back into timelines, reframed as evidence of a long-standing pattern. Clips were stitched together into dramatic montages, complete with ominous captions and speculative conclusions. History was rewritten in real time, not to understand the present, but to win arguments. Fans who supported Chrisean found themselves working overtime. They argued that regardless of past issues, mentioning something so serious about a child publicly crossed an undeniable line. They framed her reaction as instinctual, protective, and human. Critics pushed back just as hard, accusing her of escalating drama instead of de-escalating it. Comment sections became digital coliseums, where empathy and outrage clashed endlessly without resolution. The hypocrisy of it all was impossible to miss. The same people who thrive on chaos suddenly demanded composure. The same audience that rewards explosive reactions claimed to be offended by them. It was like watching someone set off fireworks and then complain about the noise. The internet loves poking pressure points, but it hates dealing with the consequences when something finally breaks. What truly escalated the situation was how quickly the focus shifted away from the original claim and onto Chrisean's response. The narrative subtly changed from "should this have been said" to "why did she react like that?" Responsibility was rerouted. The claim became background noise while her emotions took center stage. That shift wasn't accidental. It's easier to critique someone's reaction than to interrogate the recklessness of the statement that triggered it. Influencers and commentators began offering unsolicited advice like they were crisis managers. They dictated how Chrisean should have responded, what tone she should have used, what words she should have avoided. Advice quickly turned into demands. The internet wasn't just watching anymore. It was attempting to control the narrative, rewriting her reaction into something more palatable for spectators. It didn't matter that this wasn't a PR moment. It was being treated like one anyway. Behind the scenes, the pressure intensified. Every follow-up post, every moment of silence, every unrelated upload was interpreted through the lens of this controversy. Silence became suspicious. Speaking became incriminating. There was no correct move left. The story had reached a point where any action could be spun negatively. And that's when situations become truly volatile. By the end of this phase, the drama had ballooned far beyond its origin. What began as one shocking claim and one explosive reaction turned into a cultural flashpoint about boundaries, family, and the internet's obsession with inserting itself into personal chaos. The situation no longer belonged to the people involved, it belonged to the algorithm, and once the algorithm takes ownership, it never lets go quietly. The outrage had momentum. The spectators were invested, and the tension was coiled tight, waiting for the next move to snap everything back into the spotlight even harder. Because stories like this don't cool off, they escalate until something gives. By the time the noise started pretending to fade, the fallout had already settled into something permanent. Chrisean Rock's explosion didn't just dominate timelines for a day or two. It altered the way everyone involved would be seen moving forward. This wasn't a viral flare-up you scroll past and forget. This one stuck because it touched a nerve the internet never handles responsibly. Children, family, and lines that can't be uncrossed once they're crossed in public. And once that threshold was breached, there was no version of this story that ended quietly. Public perception fractured in real time. Some people locked in on one belief and refused to move an inch. To them, Karlissa's claim was reckless beyond repair, and Chrisean's reaction was the natural response of a mother pushed too far. Others flipped the script entirely, arguing that the explosion proved everything they already thought about her temperament, sympathy, and suspicion existed, side by side like rivals sharing the same headline. And once the internet splits that way, there's no merging lanes again. The relationship dynamics around Chrisean felt the shift immediately. Supporters became louder, more defensive, almost protective, like they were bracing for another wave. Critics became more entrenched, watching closely for any misstep that could validate their stance. And then there were the quiet disappearances, fewer public endorsements, less visible association, not because opinions magically changed, but because controversy has a gravitational pull. And people don't like being caught in its orbit. Silence became the safest move, even when it spoke volumes. Behind the scenes, the consequences carried more weight than any comment section ever could. Opportunities don't get canceled with announcements. They dissolve through distance. Conversations slow down. Doors stop opening. Brand decisions get reassessed quietly. Because anything involving family controversy is considered high-risk territory. While fans argued about who was right or wrong, decision-makers were calculating exposure. And those calculations rarely favor volatility, no matter how justified the anger might be. Karlissa's public image didn't escape unscathed either. The claim followed her like a shadow, referenced in every recap, every reaction video, every thread trying to assign blame. Even people who hadn't paid attention before now associated her name with that moment. Once a statement becomes the centerpiece of a controversy involving a child, it doesn't fade. It becomes a footnote that shows up everywhere, reshaping how every future comment is received. Chrisean, meanwhile, found herself in a tighter spotlight than ever. Every post, every silence, every unrelated update was filtered through the lens of that explosion. If she spoke, critics accused her of dragging it out. If she stayed quiet, they claimed she was hiding. If she looked calm, they said she didn't care enough. If she showed emotion, they called it instability. The internet didn't want resolution. It wanted confirmation. Confirmation of whichever narrative made the most noise. What became impossible to ignore was how quickly accountability conversations turned selective. People demanded responsibility from one side while excusing recklessness from the other. Context was bent to fit opinions, the original issue. Whether that claim should have ever been made publicly slowly got buried under endless debates. About tone, reaction, and optics, it was easier to critique how someone reacted than to sit with the discomfort of what triggered it in the first place. The long-term impact wasn't just reputational. It was psychological. Living under constant judgment reshapes behavior. Every move becomes calculated, every emotion measured against potential backlash. The explosion may have looked spontaneous, but what followed was caution, tension, and the awareness that nothing would be received at face value again. The internet doesn't forgive easily, and it definitely doesn't forget. As weeks passed, the story hardened into a reference point. Commentators kept circling back to it, using it to explain new developments, new arguments, new reactions. This is why it became the phrase of choice. Whether people were defending Chrisean or criticizing her, the moment stopped being about what happened and started being about what it represented. And representation online lasts far longer than truth ever does. What lingered most was the uncomfortable clarity this situation exposed. The internet claims to care about boundaries, but it thrives on crossing them. It demands transparency, then punishes emotion. It pokes relentlessly, then recoils when something finally snaps. Chrisean Rock's explosion wasn't just a reaction. It was a mirror held up to a culture that feeds on chaos and then acts surprised when chaos answers back. And that's where this chapter lands, not with closure, but with tension still humming beneath the surface. The internet is watching, waiting, and ready to pounce on whatever comes next. Because stories like this don't end when the outrage dies down. They linger, they resurface, and they evolve into something even messier the next time a spark hits. If you made it this far, then let's stop pretending this was just another piece of internet drama. This wasn't a quick headline, a messy clip, or a rumor that fades by tomorrow morning. This was one of those moments that sticks, the kind that exposes how fast lines get crossed when family, children, and clout collide. And if you felt even a little uncomfortable watching this unfold, congratulations, that means you were actually paying attention. Now do what helps this channel keep breaking stories the way nobody else will. Smash that like button like it owes you money and refuses to pay it back. Likes tell the algorithm you want real breakdowns, real context, and real consequences, not sugar-coated celebrity nonsense. And don't just sit there nodding at your screen. Drop your take in the comments. Did Karlissa cross an unforgivable line? Was Chrisean's explosion justified? Or did this situation spiral because the internet refuses to mind its business? Say it loud, because the comment section is where the real trial happens. And listen closely, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications all the way on. Because stories like this never end where you think they will. They resurface, they escalate, they come back with new twists, new receipts, and new people getting dragged into the blast radius. While other channels show up late and recycle the same takes, this one stays ahead of the chaos, connecting dots before the narrative flips. Scandals don't slow down, family drama doesn't disappear. And the next shock is always one post away. When it drops, you don't want to hear about it secondhand, you want to already be here. This is where lines get exposed. This is where narratives fall apart. This is Celeb SYNC.